Welcome to another Quantum Conversation. I'm Loren Gailey, and I invite you to sit back as we enter the quantum realm, that space of the greater part of you. It is your connection to infinite possibilities, infinite potential, and infinite mastery. Beautiful hearts, thank you so much for joining us. We have another conversation in our Developing Psionics Summit series. I'm really excited today because we're continuing to talk about clairs, our clair abilities, and how we can actually gain more clair abilities. My guest today is Susan Sophia James. She is a sound healer and a spiritual teacher here assisting so many people transform their lives, from healing from a diagnosis to absolutely clearing our own energy and making the most of our spiritual faculties. Let's welcome Susan Sophia James. Hi, Susan. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me, Loren. It's great to be here.
As we cover some of these topics about our clarabilities, let's start with you and your background. You do incredible work with all walks of life. And as we're talking about clarabilities, how did you develop this or reclaim your skills? What happened in your journey with your clarabilities?
Well, one of the things that happened is when I was a child, pretty young, I used to go out of my body and see myself sleeping on the bed, and that just seemed normal. Bless you. And I also had visitors they were the same visitors for quite a while. But I think when you're a kid, you don't realize that this is any different than you just don't know. And then I had my parents divorced and I lived with my father, and I could hear some of his thoughts, which was a strong thought, which was he was afraid I was crazy like my mother, because I was also very artistic. So as my mother was, and she was also gifted. And so for a long time, I had kind of my innate presence on earth is to be in intuitive work and spirituality. So that's always been part of my life. However, I also had that thought in my head from my father. So then so to me, that's sort of like an oppression. And then at some point, I realized that oppression was a gift, because it kept me protected until the time was right to reveal certain things. And one of the things that I did in reclaiming that was I did an exercise which I want to share with people so they can do it, which is called a intuitive timeline. And what you do is so if an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper is a rectangle, if you turn it on its side and either tape additional 8.5 by 11s to it or get a piece of butcher paper and put a line on that and think of that as your life from birth to now, and start remembering the intuitive experiences that you had, and put a line on that, a marker. So if the line goes this way, then the marker is here, and you'd say 4 years old, whatever it was, a dream, an intuitive experience, with an animal, whatever it was, and start writing those down, but leave spaces in between, because the process of writing them down helps us value our intuition. It brings it into that we care about it, it's important, and we're starting to remember these different experiences. So let it be a process it's not something you're going to do in an hour. It might take 3 weeks to give yourself time to remember, or a month, and just come back to it as they pop up, because as you start remembering, you'll remember more. And then when you feel that you've had that paper for a while and you're done, then look over and identify where the patterns were, what different kinds of experiences that you have consistently, and look at them as a collection. So some people that I've met, they feel like other people have better intuition. And so this is also a way of reclaiming and valuing your own intuition, and noticing also, so this is also a really important piece, which is the feeling, because we are very connected to our intuition through our feeling awareness. So how did it feel to have that experience? Was it, you just had it, there was nobody to talk to? How, and that even could put levels. So not all intuitive experiences maybe are on the same spectrum, while some may be more mild, some are way more potent or profound. So you could even number the ones or put a star by the one that was a bigger intuitive experience. So you're starting to notice kind of the spectrum, and when they occurred, was it relative to other things happening in life? And it's a way to reclaim your intuitive abilities.
Very good. I really do love that. And as I am making my little sheet right here,
Yay.
what I'm realizing, and thank you for saying this is going to take time, because it will open up other experiences. What I realize about myself is that I really didn't start paying attention to it until things happened. Like I keep going back to this time I had a dream, and in the dream, I saw the flashing police lights as I was driving my car. But then the next day, I'm literally driving my car, and I choose to get into an HOV lane 3 miles before it became an HOV lane. It was only for motorcycles at the time, and I knew what I was doing. But I decided, no, I'm going to get in right now. It's only 3 miles. And at that time, I had that remembrance of the dream the night before, and I overrode it. And so then I'm driving, and then what did I see in my rearview mirror? The exact thing that was in my dream. So that,
Oh,
for me, and it took a lot of time because I didn't have my updated car insurance. So not only did I get a ticket, but I had to go into a court and wait for hours. So it was very inconvenient. But that to me was a big, and that was like in my 30s. I think maybe even when I was 40 something, who knows? So see, isn't that amazing that the memories are few and far between? But as I was beginning this process, then I go back to a story earlier where I had an experience with a ghost in my house. So see, I can see how that opens it up. Interesting how we forget, right?
right. And also, so if you can tune into the feeling of the dream, then it helps you remember, because once we can connect to the feeling, that reminds us of, oh, when I felt that before, or again, when I'm feeling that now, so that you can go, oh, I don't have to respond or negate it in this, I can change the response.
Okay.
If it's a response that ignoring, like, we're learning about it, so we're ignoring sometimes
Yeah.
those messages, right? Yeah.
I can sense it was a solar plexus thing. And when I really, so in the dream, I was like, right? I had that in the dream. And then the next day, when I actually went through it in reality, I did have that same feeling again, the catch your breath. Ah, dang. So it's very interesting. So it's so when you so feeling something like that on a visceral level is definitely something to pay attention to.
Well, yes, and we know that a lot of the clairabilities have a relationship to our body knowing. So our body knowing, so this kind of takes us to another place, is some people have experienced physical or sexual trauma or whatever kind of trauma, and they don't want to be in their body. And so feeling our intuition is also part of feeling in our body. So sometimes that trauma can block us, or it can just simply be that most of us have been raised in a culture where that's not part of the conversation ever. So we just don't have the association, but we have the gut knowing, the solar plexus where you kind of feel contraction, or I often feel things in my third eye too, where I feel kind of tingling, or yeah, and sometimes in my throat.
Uh-huh.
It depends. Sometimes it's a contraction or it's just a hyper focus there. And then we also know when we feel love or compassion, usually we do feel that in our heart. Not always, sometimes solar plexus too. Not everyone's the same. What I've learned is that if I say shut your eyes and put your hand on where you feel the gut knowing, people may move their hand in different places or even to the side, and that's not wrong. It's specific to that person. So that's another piece, is that a lot of times we think that it's just this very narrow way, and it's more expansive than that. And so each person may have different experiences where they experience things. So it's giving ourselves permission is another big one, right? Is
Yeah.
giving ourselves permission to remember our intuition, because sometimes it opens a door that we want to keep the lid on too. So for people that have, you might say, out of body experiences or remote viewing or things that are more, they're further out, probably in the intuitive spectrum. Sometimes that can be, oh no, because I have met people that way too, that it's can be frightening unless they have support.
Interesting. Okay. And as you were sharing here, you know, my example is now having me look at other things that are not quite so jarring, like in the solar plexus. There's other experiences of when, wow, you know, like the heart is wide open and there's this knowingness. There's a knowingness, and there's also the ego mind that could come in and discredit that knowing.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, the ego mind can hop, it kind of, so the intuition, our intuition feeling as a multisensory being comes first, and it comes quickly. It's not like you're thinking, I'm going to have an intuitive experience. It just arrives. It's quick. But the rational mind can hop on there and kind of override it sometimes, or have an argument with it, almost like, no, you didn't, or maybe even acting on that intuition can seem like an antithesis to the direction that you're in life, or maybe it's embarrassing. I don't, you know, it have a scope of things that you're like, no, I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
And you have the choice. You have the choice. You have the choice, right? Yeah. And in your example, you could say, could it have been a remote viewing or a pre-deja vu?
Yes, it was a
So
deja vu, I'm certain that
yeah,
I overrode. Interesting.
right. So there's different ways than we could. I like to think about intuition is not always linear, meaning that we can have experiences that are out of linear time. And I'll give you an example. I was doing a presentation on afterlife communication and after death connection, or you can mix those words up different ways. And I was talking about a person who had a pre-death communication from the person who was going to pass. And someone in the group said, yes, I have also had that. And she said a friend of hers who was healthy 2 weeks before she was going to die came to her in a dream and said, I'm really good. I feel great about my life, but I'm going to pass in 2 weeks. And it was a very vivid dream, but she didn't call her friend up and say, hey, and her friend did die. And she shared her dream with the family who she happened to be close with, and they really appreciated it. But it was out of linear time. So most of the time people think about after death communication, but there's also can be pre-death communication.
Wow, okay. And that's interesting to share that with the person. I don't know if I would do that either. Maybe just reach out and connect and share love and communicate on a level. But
And
interesting. So it was in hindsight that she realized. So hindsight is 2020 because we may not trust it. So what we're working on is learning how to trust that before we get to the hindsight.
that's true. And in her case, her response was fine. It didn't mean she needed to do anything. She had a good relationship, and there was no pulling for her to show up and say, how can I fix you? Or what do you need? Or anything like that, because her friend was having a great time.
And it's a soul, it was her soul aspect saying, I'm fine.
Yeah, right.
Okay. Her soul agreement. Wow. Okay. All right. So this exercise of our intuition experiences of charting that out is very helpful. What are some other things that we can do to develop these different clairs? Maybe you want to go over some of the different sensations or feelings that we could have that allow us to understand what clairs we're using or strong at.
Sure. So I'm going to name one that's often not talked about. Well, a couple of them. One is clairaudience or clair. It's also called clairalience. Yes. And it's smelling the presence of a spirit who usually is someone who has passed, which could be, I had a person whose grandmother used a violet perfume. So she smelled that perfume, and that was comforting. And then another person had a grandfather who smoked cigars, and so that cigar smoke would show up, and I thought, okay, now we're in a time when we're using non-scents, no scented items and no smoke, so I don't know if those associations are going to be as strong. So that's one of them. And then I had an experience once where I had an odor which is associated with an ascended master, which is rose, the smell of roses. And that occurred prior to their presence. So there's also orange blossoms. Those are some of the common ones. And another person I know saw her husband in a quote dream, and it wasn't a specific scent. It wasn't like Old Spice or something, but it was just a mixture of maybe clothes and body scent, and she had clairalience as one of her experiences. Another one is clairvoyance, which is clear seeing, and of course, if you listen to people who are talking about their abilities, like after death communication or they're psychic, they will often say, I see. However, a lot of people interpret that as I see a video in front of me, and then they feel they're a failure because they can't see that way. And I'd say the majority of people who are using that term don't really see externally. They see internally and interpret it in that kind of language. So to me, that helps people to not feel like I'm supposed to see it like a video. So that's another one. And then there's one that I named, which is called clair kinesthetic, where you can feel the touch of something that is not physical, which can be people who do dream about someone who has passed. They can actually touch them, or they feel being patted on the hand or patted on the shoulder, the back, or something. And there's clair taste, where I've known people who can be around someone and say, hey, you're on a medication that's not working for you. So that's a very unusual one. And there's clairaudience, which has a lot of different applications because it has to do with sound. So I would gather that a lot of people are not aware that they may use clairaudience all the time in interpreting how they experience someone's voice. So it's not necessarily what they're saying, but it's the energy and intention behind the voice that they resonate with. So our voices are very, they hold a lot of meaning in them, and there's a lot of energy and information that's tied up in the voice. So we do interpret through clairaudience that way. And most people would think, oh, it's like schizophrenic, hearing voices or something. And people who are musicians, right, they have clairaudience because they're hearing songs and they record them. So I'm a song carrier, so I receive sometimes music that goes with sometimes a ceremony. And that is another kind of, so I'm tuned in a different way than maybe Usher or someone else. So there's different ways that clairaudience, we also can sometimes hear a message that we're getting that is, I would say, we would call it telepathy or thought transference. So if we're communicating with someone who has passed or another being, or there's a transference of sound, that we're having a conversation or we're receiving information. So that's another kind of clairaudience. There's actually quite a few I wrote a book called 50 Plus Kinds of Intuition, and I realized, oh, there's a lot of different ways that we can apply these abilities. But those are kind of the basic ones that are useful to people in just knowing and experiencing. And one of the ways that we can really develop our intuition is through our dreams, because that's a very powerful and potent place, because we're not in the rational mind. So we can work on all kinds of incubating answers by programming ourselves. So saying throughout the day, I'm going to remember my dream. I'm going to remember my dream. This is the topic. And again, back to feelings. If you're just speaking it and you don't have a strong connection to it, it's not as powerful to influence the dream or getting the answer. So having that feeling connection is very important for working really with anything that's connecting to that feeling. So I wanted to give people some tools so they can better remember their dreams. And one of them is you can drink water before you go to sleep. So you have to wake up in the night to pee. And that will help you have a dream. And of course, lots of people talk about get a dream journal, get a pen, get a flashlight. Best not to turn on the light because it wakes us up too much. So having a flashlight, and then also mark your journal with the right page, because recently I opened my journal up and I wrote on a page I'd already written on, so I couldn't figure out what I wrote. And don't worry about how you write, like if you scribble, just write it down, because that helps to remember. And the other thing that most people don't know is when you have a dream, to be still. So repeat the dream in stillness, because when you start to move, it dissipates the dream and it starts to just disappear. So move as little as possible and repeat it.
Wow. Okay. You have given us a lot there, and it's so beautiful because as you were sharing going into this, I was going to ask you about the dream space. And so that is a beautiful place for those who are dreamers and have interesting dreams. I know some people say, well, I'm not a dreamer, but we can do tools like you suggested to make us aware of our dreams. So I love the fact that we, for one, let's say when we dream about someone who has passed, like my mother, or actually I've got a very significant one with my stepdad, like 3 days after he passed, and I was like, get out of my dream. You are not allowed in my dream. But what happened with that was our relationship was totally healed from a series of 3 dreams within 10 days of his passing. And that was so healing for me that that was a miracle. And this is our sentience. That's one of our clairs. So it's a visitation actually. So I can see why paying attention to our dreams would be really important, because when we dream of someone who's on the other side, even if it's just like my mother recently, she's just hanging out in my dreams. She's not doing anything. She's actually showing me how easy things can be. So I find that very, very helpful. And what you're saying is that's a clair right there. So we can expand that into a waking state, a conscious, aware waking state. So when I get information because I had it in my dream, is that fair to say, trust what you get, go into the heart? Are there protocols to do? But that's very interesting, isn't it? The dream space with visitations.
It is, and again, it's back to, like you said, you felt it was kind of restoring the relationship.
Yes, it was. He was my
So,
greatest adversary in this life, and now he's one of my guides.
oh, interesting. And you told him to get out of your dream, and he came back in the dream
Well, he
after
was
you said
just
that?
well, I was like in my waking state the next day, like in the dream, it was one of those moments where I was like, I was climbing up the stairs, going up the stairs, and I pass his bedroom, and he's in the bedroom, and he's young. He's 28 years old, had a cigarette out hanging out of his mouth. He was sitting in a chair with no shirt on, handsome guy. And he was just staring at me, not staring, but just looking at me, emanating so much love. And I go, oh, you're here. Like, you're here. And then the next day when I woke up, I was like, no, 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 you're not allowed. But then he continued 2 more times after that. And that's when the incredible healing came around. Incredible. So interesting.
Yes, very, and sometimes like the experience I told you with, I realized that oppression was really a protection. That I don't know if the adversarial was a protection or a way to help you develop being stronger.
Yes.
Okay, yeah.
Made me so super strong, stronger and more confident than my mother. My mother
Oh,
was doormat, so to speak. So he was, yeah, yeah, yeah. He was coming in to kick me in the astral, actually. Really. Yeah. So interesting. Okay. And here's
cool.
another, go ahead. I'll let you respond.
Oh, no, go ahead. You were gonna say something.
Okay, so the dream space, it's really beautiful. It's really wonderful. We've got some work to do there. Pay attention to that. As you heard from the people who in the dream space heard from their friend who was passing. Okay, that's really interesting. What would you say about ears ringing? Because we've talked about this a lot. When our ears ring, it's not tinnitus. It's more of like an energetic shift. That I'm realizing could also be sensory information. Could it be energy coming into our field, messages, information? What are your thoughts on ringing in the ears?
Um, I think it can be like adjustments, right? Adjustments, and maybe it is different for different people. Maybe for some people it is an energetic adjustment to the direction that they're going. Or for other people, there may be content that is occurring in that sound. It depends. I've certainly gone through times when it's happening a lot, the pitches can change, the intensity can be louder or softer. Sometimes it feels like it's happening even in a different part of hearing. At least that's my experience. And it just seems like it's an adjustment of some kind, whether it's information or tweaking your field.
Yes, okay. Wonderful. So what about channelers, people who channel? That's definitely something to do with the clairs, right? So what do we do when we're tuning into some of these clairs and these sensations? How can we get the most out of that? How can we benefit from it? Like to start channeling or um, giving guidance to people or just tuning in a little bit more.
Me, one of the most, well, a couple critical things. One is to keep working on our own compassion and forgiveness so that we are coming into our heart, and also we're doing clearing work. So we're clearing our own energy, and that we have awareness of when, so we're looking to up level and release our own, some people call it the shadow or our blind side. So those are important pieces in our own progressing, is to be willing to release that. And a lot of that happens through accessing altered states of what we call altered, which are really normal states of consciousness through you. I like to use sound, certain and particular sound, to access what we generally call meditation, because it releases trauma and it accesses us to the neurological patterns that are opening to our intuition and to our receptivity. So it helps us build that connection of coming into calmness, releasing emotional and mental kind of dysregulation to regulation. So connecting to those places builds that part of our being. And really, ancient people knew that it's not a separate thing that you might do once in a while. They knew it was part of their culture, where individuals and groups did it together, because you harmonize and entrain to your heart to a rhythm that is harmonious. So it's really, to me, it's an evolutionary leap to include that, because it also releases stress and cortisol and inflammation. And those are the underlying causes of physical and mental health disease.
Yeah, I am thinking about how we get this into the schools, how we can begin to cultivate this with the children and to keep the children open, because do children come in aware, but we shut it down? Or in your experience, it's different for everyone? What are your thoughts on the children and how we can cultivate it for children?
I have an answer to how do we get it in the schools, because I've
Please.
thought about this for a really long time.
Yes.
I was in this huge auditorium, and this poor woman, she was a teacher, and she was saying, I have these crazy kids. They can't settle down. They're restless. They can't focus. They have issues at home. You know, it's very difficult to teach them. And I didn't get to answer, but the answer is, when teachers can use particular kinds of music to help people just come back and relax and take a deep breath, it doesn't have to be discussed as some meditation. It's just calming people and allowing them to come back into their center. So to me, that would be pretty simple to do for any age, and to train young kids to be able to use that as a teenager would be really important, since they're going through hormonal changes and social pressure, and then we have anxiety from cell phones and social media. So that using the music would be really helpful for them and give them a gift to be able to navigate.
Beautiful, yes. And you, as a sound healer, know so well how it's calming and soothing. And even those who may not be aware of sound healing, when things happen in our life, music always lifts us up. Well, it can bring us down if it's sad or tranquil, right? It could take us into whatever it needs, but it's that return home, the sound. That's amazing. That's beautiful.
Well, there's other music that the CIA used in the jungles in Nicaragua to move the insurgents out, and they played heavy metal. So we know there's other uses of music as well that could derange you, right? Like long-term exposure. So yeah, it's definitely particular. It's not Fabulous 50s either. It's particular kind of music. Yeah.
As we've heard from Masaru Emoto and the music and what water crystals develop into, or their lack of developing in any structure with heavy metal music. Okay,
Right.
interesting. So what other tools will help us with our clairs? You may have some more to share with us.
I do. I have another one, which is for people who have used a pendulum or want to use a pendulum. And when you use a pendulum, you have just something that's heavy that's suspended. It doesn't have to be anything groovy. It can just be, I met a guy who said he was in Egypt and he lost his pendulum, and he was using it inside the chambers and looking for certain things. And so he found an old bolt on the side of the road and got a string. And there, behold, he had a pendulum. So when you have a pendulum, the question always is, am I influencing the answer? So a method that people can use is if you write questions down on a piece of paper, whatever number of questions you have, but you have to give them a number. And then you get as many numbers as plain white envelopes, and you put the numbers on the one number on each envelope. And then you get a piece of paper, all the same size, and you write down those questions, whatever number you have, let's say 1 through 5, and you fold the paper all the same, and each question goes into one envelope. So then you mix the envelopes up, and before you begin, you always clear yourself and set your intention for your highest and best purpose. And then you take an envelope out, so they're shuffled, and you want to turn them over so you can't see the numbers. And then you hold the pendulum, you establish your right answer, your no answer, and your yes answer. And I always have a maybe answer, and hold the pendulum over the envelope, and then see, is it yes or no or whatever. And then you write down, then you flip the envelope over, get the number, write down if it's yes or no, and then go on to the next until you've finished. So then you're not influenced by your opinion or your quote handshaking or whatever. You can look at the answers and feel confident that your conscious mind hasn't influenced the response of the pendulum.
That is very interesting. I love that. And I never, you know what? It is what's going on when we're using a pendulum. I've got mine right here. And it's interesting that now in hindsight, as I remember asking some serious questions and trying to avoid fear. That's a key thing. We don't want to be in fear when we're asking questions, but being in that calm place. And as I was feeling or asking the pendulum questions, I had a sense of knowing. And so now you're helping me remember what I was feeling when I was asking the pendulum certain questions. And then in hindsight, everything was fine and it was real. So I love that exercise because that is what validates what we get. It confirms what we're getting. So, okay. Are there ways that people make mistakes? What do we do if people make a mistake? Any ideas on fine-tuning that?
What do you mean by state?
If they find out that they used a pendulum and it wasn't accurate, like it
Oh,
was the opposite of what they wanted or what they thought, and it turns out that that was wrong.
well, going back to what you just said, which is I noticed the feeling. So
Mhm.
this is the theme, is that our intuition is operational, whether we have a pendulum or we have a dream, it's the feeling. So we are the resource, us. So noticing, oh, that's what that felt like, helps you gauge, okay, I, maybe I influenced it, or that's somehow, or that's what I wanted, or that's what I thought I wanted, or again, tuning into the feeling.
Yes, and again, that gut feeling of, and this is what they teach children in schools, some teachers, more and more teachers now. Does it feel good? Does it feel expansive or does it feel retractive? Like punching down. And that to me is like the basic number one beginning for feeling. Does it make you feel expansive or retracted? And then now we can talk about becoming psychic or getting messages from people who are on the other side, right?
Yeah, you can. I think it's important to me to not uh impose, I guess impose would be the right word,
Mhm.
expectation from someone who's passed to stick around if that's not their path.
Important.
So some people might not want to let go, or so some people who pass, they go. They don't hang around. And other people, and they may come zip in and go, oh, okay, whatever, and out they go, right? Um, and others may be more present or feel like they're around all the time. So I feel like we have to be careful that we're not imposing our will and that we're being sensitive.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. That's really important. Okay. All right. So I would like to invite our Zoom audience to raise your hand and ask our beautiful guest, Susan, question about your abilities or any experiences that you've had. Right now, we're going to go to Fallon. Hi, Fallon. You can unmute and say hello.
Hi, can you
Hi.
hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, I actually have two questions. The first one being about dream journaling and just journaling in general. I am a chronic lucid dreamer and I have pretty much, I would say near 80% recall of dreams, like for, content. And I'm very careful about writing it down because of incidences where I seem to have uh, this occur when I write things down. It manifests them in what people would call reality, which is, the 3D, 4D world, like the earth realm. And I'm wondering, because when I have dreams, there's usually some kind of interplay between good forces and negative forces. I'm wondering if I can flip this around for positive. What to do about that?
So you're saying your experience is that when you write the dreams down, that you have a negative experience, is that right?
Um, if I write, I'm mostly careful not to write down dreams. It's just it's pretty much anything that has a basis in reality, like if it's inner journaling, like wants, fears, if it's physical dreams that I've had, like lucid dreams or astral travel dreams, if I write it, it manifests in the, realm of, the daytime, and yeah, so I'm not sure if that's something that needs to be cultivated or if it's something that I should avoid.
Well, do you consider that you're processing these uncomfortable experiences in the dream time?
Yes.
And is it helpful, like you're writing them down because you felt like it was helpful, but now you feel like it's not helpful?
When I wrote them down, certain things that I write that's helpful when they're positive, when it's coming from me, it seemed to affect positive change within my, whatever I come across. But when it's been somebody else who's like forcibly prompted me to write something down that had, like, when I was first learning about neuroplasticity without fears, it manifested them
I
in the
see.
physical.
So a couple things you could do. One is to give yourself permission to put parameters on your lucid dreaming. If you feel like it's manifesting negative things, to write it down, is to um, decide or command that you don't want to have those kinds of dreams. Another way that you could work with those dreams, if it's working through things that have occurred in the past that you need to release, then you
Yeah.
might want to do that with someone that you feel safe, so that you can change the pattern of it having manifest. So those are a couple things that you could do. Another thing is, if you have something that you feel is a protective element that you could put by, like, identify that element. It could be a stone or a sacred geometric form as a protection, and that you're taking that into the lucid dream time with you. So those are some other possibilities that you could use. It depends on yeah, the nature of how disruptive they are and what kind of support you have.
Yeah. Yeah, that sounds, yeah, I've been looking for a totem, but I haven't found one yet. And then that seems very helpful. And then the other question I have is a little odd. Um, I have sensed death energy. I'm getting better at shielding myself from it. But I'm wondering if I can learn to shield others from it, and if there's some reason why I sense that.
Are you saying in waking consciousness or the dream
Yes,
time?
waking consciousness, it feels like a heavy black cloud, but it's like, like thick thunder, but it's when somebody dies and I don't know about it through, normal means till maybe a couple days later, but I've sensed it, and people have referred to me as being evil from this ability, and I don't know if it's still in my aura or if I can use that to help people with it.
Well, what I'm wondering why you feel it. So you're feeling it as a negative because we're programmed, especially in our culture, to consider death as negative, but
Yeah.
it's not necessarily negative. It's part of coming to Earth, and it's a birth into something else. In some traditions, when a person dies, they have a celebration because they completed. So I don't know if you hold a certain kind of negative idea of death, and that we have contracts for exiting times, and we come in with those contracts. So there's that, and if you feel that other people find your knowing about the death, that would be the cue that you no longer share those
Uh-huh.
experiences with them, that they have,
Okay.
um, yeah, I, I would, and I wanted to say one more thing about your previous question is you can also use a certain kind of sound if you're listening to sound to attune to a different consciousness before you fall asleep. So that will influence your lucid dreaming. So it kind of heightens your energy field.
Yeah, that's helpful. And then also, I'm thinking this may relate to the whole sensing the death energy exit. My grandfather, my mom's father passed while I was 6 months in the womb, and I think maybe I attuned it or entrained it from that.
Okay. So you feel like you picked it up and that you feel
Yeah.
overly sensitive to it.
Yeah, like people are leaving me kind of a thing.
Okay, so well, people are they are leaving, you know, I mean, people are coming and going, and maybe that's something that you could ask to resolve in your, since you are a good lucid dreamer, that you could ask for support in uh, resolving the leaving part through the dreams, or you could work with a person and do it through dreaming.
Yeah. Yeah, that sounds pretty like spot on. Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Those are great questions, Fallon.
Thank you.
Thank you, Fallon. Really cool. And it's just indicative of how, I never really put the dream space through so much. I didn't give it that much awareness, but you're helping me and all of us understand that it's very important.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm glad because I've been referred to as a bridge, so I'm starting to understand that.
You are
Thank
a bridge.
you.
You know what,
Yeah.
Fallon? Good for you on your lucid dreaming. People spend years trying to develop that, and that seems so natural for you. So, let me ask you a question. When you lucid dream, share with us what you're doing. You're like aware that something's not right in the dream, right? Like the floor could look weird. And is that what reminds you that you can shift into what you want to have happen in the dream? Is that what you mean by lucid dreaming?
Not at all. So it's semi-astral, where I know exactly. It's usually like I click into it, like I'll feel it before I fall completely asleep, and I know that it's a dream realm, and I'm completely aware. There's sometimes where certain frequencies, if I've had a negative experience, will hold me hostage, even though I'm aware that it's a lucid dream. But usually I'm sensing or I'm traveling with other entities. There's ones that I call figments, which are some kind of thought manifestations in the dream realm, and there's other entities that I come across. And there's been some effort from entities in another universe trying to cross over, and I've been trying to recruit people to help with that, to kind of, they're ones that want to take over this because the earth is shifting, and I've been kind of trying to keep them over. So if anybody sees like a medium gray walls, and then the molding is this dark, like gloomy violet shade, and they're angled like almost like at a slant, and then they sense like a fear presence, there's these negative entities coming through. But that's just one fraction of it. I've also used it as a platform to travel astrally to other worlds, and you can really develop different abilities, like, what people would call superhero powers. There's super villains. You can use it for practicing creative endeavors, music, other things. You can use it to run out scenarios. It's mostly recognizing that you're awake within the dream, and it's a tactile experience, really. And yeah, there's a lot of experimentation, but it's whatever frequency that we're at. And even if we're mostly a high frequency, if there's something latching onto us, say from the past or from a different timeline or life, then it'll drag us down, and they'll latch on and they'll try to pull you out of those higher realms. But it's really important to, when you're waking up, to, like she said, like Miss Susan, to stay still and set an intention to know what the dream symbols mean. And I think we all have this ability, we're just not aware of it.
Well, you are doing a wonderful job and working with your continuity of consciousness, Fallon. Thank you for sharing, and happy developing and curating more of these skills in your life. Nice work.
Thank you, and you're welcome. I really appreciate being able to inform people who are ready to understand.
Yes,
And
yes.
I appreciate your help. I'll definitely incorporate that. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Beautiful. Well, Susan, that is very interesting. You've opened this conversation up to amazing topics, and I'm excited to talk more about the sound that you offer. And there's a program. So for people who want to work with you, you've got a spiritual transformation program that we can talk about, a spiritual awakening and transformation of experience. But you also do personal sessions with people to help them understand what's going on in their lives really well. Can you share with us how you work with your clients in a session?
Usually I want to know what they want, right? And kind of their previous experiences, so that I can kind of gauge where we're starting. And then depending on, sometimes we do ceremony, we do certain sound, and we can I use sound to travel, to access either recovery or viewing and integrating things. And also I always give homework. So homework can be continuing certain practices, and also starting new practices that the person can engage in their life to help work on a certain area. So one of the things I also wanted to say is I just opened up a new program that I offered for about 12 years. It's a mystical studies program, which is also a mystery school that's starting March 4th in 2025. And it's about a 1.5 year program. So that will be a way to participate in learning some regular everyday skills that expose people to an array of different abilities to heighten awareness and connection, and also connection with the earth, and for our generation and for the generations to come. So it's through the heart, but also accelerating consciousness.
Beautiful. Nice work. Thank you. You are a sound healer. You've been part of the Globe Sound Healing Conference with David Gibson here on New Earth One Network. And it's so beautiful, the work that you do and the support that you offer many people on our planet at this time. So tell us also about the Spiritual Awakening and Transformative Experience program.
That program is an online program that people do independent, and it goes through a series of different systems that are, so if you go through those systems once, there's one layer to it, and as you keep working with it, it opens, and it's through sound. So there are there's a guide that tells you where to start, and then there are also choices that you can make within the program, because there's different sound patterns that you can select to listen to based on your preference. And then there's different journaling or recording questions to get in different categories to help record progress, to see insights, and to develop awareness of patterns, and to notice deeper awareness connections within how we feel, and other ways that we're developing with those programs.
Okay, thank you for that. The link to that is wherever you're watching this video. It's also in the chat if you're joining us on Zoom, and in the description box in our YouTube channel. Also, you got here from an email. If you got our email, it's in the email. Just click that and you'll learn more and be able to work with Susan. A beautiful opportunity. Check it out and resonate. If it resonates with your heart, please explore that. It's a beautiful opportunity. Susan, thank you so much for your time today. This has been so enlightening. I guess my last question would be, where do we go from here? What is that world where we are tuned in? How do you see that world when we're tuned in this way, where we're confident? We're not going to be at the mercy of a lot of the crazy information out there. This is really the rudder of our boat in life, right? These abilities. What are your thoughts on that as we say goodbye and close?
It's kind of the people that are the outliers that are forming the tools to help formulate where we want to go. And as we have the courage to engage those abilities, we're changing ourselves, but we're healing ourselves. We're also accelerating ourselves. And to me, it's like, here we are today. Imagine the possibilities of where we're going in building community, in changing our educational systems, in changing the pharmaceutical industry, our food industry, the government. We are rebuilding, and we need to rebuild, because that's where we are. That's the time of change. This is a time of transformation. So we are accessing our own abilities, activating what's already innate to us. That's why we're here. So it's not that some people are special. Maybe there's some people who are just a little ahead of others, and we are bringing that information forward so that we can build that new, because Earth has been in kind of a veil it's been in a shadow, and the shadow, that veil is lifted, and we need these abilities to prepare for more exposure to the bigger multiverse that we live in. So I appreciate you, Loren, holding this space for people to share as we build this.
And I do have one last question for you. This is the most exciting part. ET contact or contactee experiences. Some of the clients that you work with have contactee experiences. And this again is where our abilities come in. And the requirement to have those experiences, in my opinion, is to not be fearful of them, because I've had some experiences and the fear that comes up is overwhelming at times. One experience that I had, I couldn't feel my knees and I didn't even think to go get my camera. And then 6 months later, I had a dream, a very vivid dream in the morning, and it was revealing that we cannot have fear. So as you were closing and saying that our next evolution as species in this planet and our galaxy, it's important that we develop this so that we can be compassionate to other off-worldly beings. What are your thoughts on this?
I wonder if some are like off-world or just a dimension over. So they're present, right? But we have been maybe dumbed down, so we haven't, our perception has diminished because people used to have more perception. It seems from my research. And so, yes, that's part of our development. And there is this whole kind of stage of fear that many of us do go through. And then it takes time to kind of process through that and move to a greater understanding. I have also had experiences. Yeah, and it is part of the process of letting go of the fear and moving into the next stage with it.
It's exciting. It's exciting and it's long overdue. I'm certain everyone watching and listening agrees. It's long overdue. So this is a beautiful way to map this out within ourselves, develop these innate abilities so that we know and are confident within ourselves what's happening, what we're experiencing, so that we can really be a bridge to the universe. We're a
And
bridge.
that's kind of what I was referencing in the beginning about that intuitive timeline. It may open up remembering experiences. And for some people that can be scary.
Yes.
So we're starting with intuitive experiences, and then if you have a memory of those other experiences, those get written down in there too, and noticing again the feeling. And that's part of the process of reclamation of our consciousness.
Thank you for that big tool in the beginning. Again, I want to remind our viewers to go back to the beginning of this show and write your list. Get your list down. Get your timeline down of your experiences. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Go.
Thank you for this opportunity. I appreciate it. I appreciate you too.
Thank you, Susan, Sophia, James. We are so grateful for the time today, and we loved the information that you've shared. We will put these skills to work, and the world is better for that. Thank you all for
Great.
receiving this as well and sharing your light on this planet. Your light matters, your love matters, and it's important no matter what's going on in our external world. Your center right here and your ability to feel into your energy and what's around you is really essential and important at this time. So thank you, Susan, and thank you everyone for being here. We love you and we are so grateful. Namaste.
Namaste.
Bye. Thank you for listening to this quantum conversation, and thank you for dancing with us to the cosmic heart. As we raise our own vibration, we raise the vibration of the planet. This show is dedicated to you and all awakening hearts, as we are here to shine our bright light and amplify our love. I'm Loren Gailey, and from my sacred heart to yours, I honor your magnificent love and light.
Great. I didn't know if I was supposed.
This has been a presentation of New Earth One Network, your home for New Earth living. Access information, education, and videos on living from the heart in unity consciousness. Visit newearth1.com.